Hello, my name's Toby and I consider myself a lockdown artist, and this is the story from my very first painting to where I'm at now. So here's my cat Ripley. Not happy at all. And here's the first painting I made back in February 2020 with my partner. She's a painter, so I just thought, you know what? Let's have a go, let's see what happens. This is what happened. It's simply just a painting of a mountain from my travels in Switzerland, and yeah, I thought it'd be a great place to start just because it's very geometrical. Quite easy to paint. Used a palette knife because I absolutely hate brushes. You know what? I painted this and I thought, yeah, this could go somewhere. This painting, Baroness on Soloway, like all my other paintings from a photograph. As I'm used to photography, I've studied photography about 7-8 years. College, university, master's degree, I've done photography, and landscape has been my subject, always. With a big archive of images, I've almost got a limited amount of paintings I can do. First one I chose to do properly was one I really liked. Baroness on Soloway was my first proper painting. The first painting I set myself a goal, and I just set myself a limited time, and I'll just do it, I'll just start it. I started it pretty much a week before the first lockdown began, so we knew something was kind of looming, but I just started it. I was working full-time as a bar manager, and it was tough, it was difficult. I had a really slow start. I spent probably one of my days off just sketching it out, one of my days off doing the undercoat, and just going really slowly with it. Do one little section at a time, think about it, sleep on it, and then think, where do I want to go with this? Now, of course, I only had big canvases. I bought a pack of 5 of 100 by 80 centimeter canvases, so at this point we had entered lockdown. I had just finished my first painting. It's weird, I've never been in this situation before. Nothing to do. So that said, I just dove into painting, and that started my painting journey. So my second painting, Tyne Dock, taken on one of my walks. I'd walked past down Tynemouth to where all the boats would come in, and it's quite surreal because sometimes you get these huge container ships that would just come right close up to where you're walking, and you get these really interesting scenes. And I think this is just one of those paintings that really interesting composition and was quite ambitious for what I was doing at the time. I made this first painting I was really proud of, so I thought I could accomplish anything. I wasn't quite ready to do the amount of detail that this image required. That's why I ended up getting painted over, because it wasn't the best, it was my second attempt, but I had no intentions of slowing down. This brings me to Tyne Dock 2. It was always meant to be a black and white photograph. I never intended this to be a painting. It was something I took about 2 years before, so I was definitely just working through my archives at this point. I certainly had a challenge with painting this one, as I had quite a detailed boat and detailed rocks in the foreground, but as I say, I had the time. The painting looks very different to the photograph. The photograph never had this green hue. I just thought adding this green, although maybe just because I like the colour, it created the sense of fog, this big cloud coming down. I thought I needed to add a bit more atmosphere. At the end of the day, this is a painting, so absolutely anything can go on the canvas, it really doesn't matter. I spent so much time on these first few canvases that we were ending the first lockdown, we were starting to come back into work. Of course, I was a bar manager, so I had a lot of work to do in the first few weeks. So now I was at a point where I still wanted to make paintings, but I didn't have much time to do it. I was really busy. At this time I wasn't really making much work. I was working on one canvas, however, and it's the one behind me. It's possibly one of my least favourites, just because it doesn't say that much about me as a painter, what I represent. It's a pretty landscape, but it got me through the time of working until I started then the second lockdown. So at this point the seasons were changing, we were getting into autumn, and we had entered the second lockdown. It was only for a month. I was quite happy that we got a month off work. I could then focus on my paintings. I thought, right, this is the second chance I get. Dive into something really detailed, something I want to do for a while. This was the second image I took next to Baroness and Soloway, my first large painting, and I wanted to try a different mood with this one. It's certainly a very different tone compared to the first painting. It's a lot cooler, it's almost quite dark. As in the first one, I changed all the rocks to squares. I don't know why, I just like the idea of squares and boxes instead of the rocks. I think it gives it much more of an industrial feel, much more that it's a man-made structure that's been almost blown apart. This image I originally attempted in the first lockdown using just brushes, but I was never really happy with the result. I could never achieve a texture, it was always really flat. I got the drawings right, but aside from that, nothing else went right for it. So this time I decided to repaint it with the skills I'd just gained from my previous work. Again, this one took me absolutely ages, so it was probably near the end of December when it was almost complete. With this one I made sure I really limited my colour palette, just like my previous painting, because it can get too busy when colours clash, so I think it really helped to keep that colour palette simple. I bought a series of smaller canvases, 16 by 20 inch. I thought I didn't want to be spending a month making a painting anymore. See what I could do with a smaller canvas. So I've been sitting on this photograph of an archway at Cullercoats, which I'd taken years ago. I think I took it when I first moved to the coast. And I adopted those techniques that I'd previously used in the larger paintings. We narrowed them down, really simplified them. Just layering on loads of white paint and blending darker tones into them. And it worked. So this piece only took me about 3 days, which is a huge comparison to spending a month on a 30 by 40 inch canvas. The speed really made a difference. I didn't step back from the canvas as much. I didn't have as much time to think about what I was doing. I just made the painting, and I think that's what made it more consistent as well. So here I am going into 2021. I thought it was fitting to finally try and repaint that second painting I tried, Tyne Dock. So this time I had the smaller canvases and I was much more competent with the palette knife. I could go in there and do the detail like I wasn't able to do before. I did sit on this painting for a few weeks. I think ultimately in the end what made it was the texturing in the water. This time I really thought about how light works and how to create like a glow and how to work with shadows, and definitely paid off on the water. So again, I'm still working on these smaller canvases. I've decided to give myself really tight time frames. So this one behind me was painted in just 4 hours. I would give myself that challenge, and I like the result. It's not quite as refined as some of the work that I've been doing, but it's more abstract, and I think it still captures what I would capture if I had a lot more time. If I could change anything with this piece, I think I would definitely reduce the colour palette. When you don't have time, you can't step back, you can't sleep on it, you can't think about it. You just have to do what feels right at the time. And that brings me to this little piece. This also just took me 4 hours. It's the first time I've worked on a really small canvas. It's just 6 by 6 inches, really small. Size is really difficult because I feel like it restrains you. Definitely is no room for mistakes. I had to use a lot of brush work with this one alongside the palette knife just because I couldn't make those big lines that I'm used to making. So then we have this panoramic piece, which I have to say I made quite quickly. I made within about 3 days, just as well as my arch picture. Daylight lighting, so it's not quite as golden, not quite as sunrisey, but I still wanted to maintain that cool atmosphere, that cold feeling. It is kind of an icy pool of water, especially in the rocks. I wanted to replicate this depth blanket of midday light that's just like a big softbox in the sky. So guys, that's about it. That's where I'm at now. I am working on a large painting. It's not finished yet, so I will update progress on that. So yeah, if you'd like to check out my work in more detail, I do have a website that is posted in the description below. I also have a shop where you can buy prints. I have my own printer here. It is a A3 Plus professional printer. I'll probably do a separate video on that one. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll keep on painting.